just give it another minute or two. Okay, those of us that are already here, this is the Medical Needs in Schools workshop, Getting to Know Your School Nurse. Please join with video off and microphone muted. We're going to leave questions until the end, and do feel free to write in the chat bar any questions that you may have, but we're going to try and leave the questions until the end, but we will be keeping an eye on those as they come in. So I think we'll make a start. Welcome to Medical Needs in Schools workshop, Getting to Know Your School Nurse. Jo Leek is the school nurse manager for the alternative provision team in Suffolk.
Becky said, oh yeah, well, we're just going to wait.
Okay, we'll try that again. So we welcome Jo. Jo Leek is the school nurse manager for alternative provision team in Suffolk. After qualifying as a nurse, she worked in acute paediatrics before moving in the community, where she undertook further training to become a specialist community public health practitioner, basically school nursing. Jo has been in the role of school nurse supporting the needs of children and young people, particularly those with special educational needs, for over 20 years. She also has a teaching qualification in healthcare education, and combined with previous experience as a school governor, brings knowledge and skills across a wide range of areas. So Jo, welcome and thank you for giving us your time today.
Thanks, Kate. So I'm sure lovely to see people here today. I'm sure probably I have had contact with some of you over those many years. So today we're just going to give you a little bit of an overview, because one of the feedbacks that Kate has had in some of her contacts with yourselves is a lack of understanding about the sort of school nursing service. So this is an opportunity just to update you on where things are at. The presentation that I'm giving today has been developed by one of my colleagues in school nursing, so I'm not taking the credit for the actual presentation. And just to let you know, it is being shared with other professionals. For instance, we've shared it with GPs in one of the areas in the county. So hopefully trying to share information as best as we can. As Kate said, I'll take questions at the end, because it just is a bit easier when you're trying to present, not to have to keep an eye on chat bars and hands and things like that. So just a little bit of background to start with. As Kate mentioned in my sort of introduction, school nurses are qualified nurses or midwives who've undertaken specialist community public health training. We otherwise call it SCIFIN for short, because it's a bit of a mouthful. And the idea that school nurses are qualified to provide support for children aged 5 to 19 years. So that's thinking about the whole of their health and well-being, a very holistic approach, thinking about things such as support, advice, information. The mainstream school nurses have a lot of involvement with children and young people who are presenting with emotional health and well-being needs, such as the anxiety, stress and depression that I'm sure you've witnessed a lot and are experiencing a lot at the moment in your schools. They also deliver the National Child Measurement Programme for children in reception and year 6. So that's known as NCMP. Some of you, I'm sure most of you will be familiar with that. That's where height and weight is measured in those 2 year groups. We also do hearing and vision screening in reception. We do parental workshops, either in schools. Obviously, at the moment, our offer has been very much virtual. We've been a little bit behind, maybe not quite as forward as medical needs in schools and other forums are in our delivery of the virtual offer, but that is increasing at the moment. And we also have Chat Health, which is our school nurse texting service. So some of these bits we will cover in the presentation today. So they're sort of some of the main bits that we're going to go through and let you know a little bit more detail about. So we do work, although we are independent practitioners in our own right, as you can see from this slide, we do work alongside a lot of other agencies. You can see the list there because we can't all do it ourselves. We have to work in partnership with yourselves and all these other people in order to help children and young people stay safe, stay happy and remain healthy. So we are very much working in partnership with parents and carers, engaging with them, really placing children and young people at the heart of what we do, as I know you are all very aware of, and that is part of your practice. We're looking very much on trying to improve outcomes and the quality of care that we offer to children and young people. We look at the signs of safety. I'll bring in a little bit about that. I'm sure you're familiar with using the signs of safety approach. We're very much about delivering evidence-based practice. So sometimes I know that might come a little bit difficult, perhaps because depending on where people's perceptions are, what learning they've had before, we try and bring that best evidence-based practice for health to the table, which can sometimes bring some interesting discussions, but they're always valuable and in order to try and improve those outcomes for children and young people. And as we've said, very much working in partnership with all those other children, that network of support, because no child stands alone. So this is a bit of a busy slide. It's just really to sort of say about the levels of service that we offer. So there are the 4 domains that come into play. The diagram on the right is taken from our standard operating procedure, and it's something that I'm sure some of you may have heard the terms be used when you're working particularly like in the CAF, in the family network meeting, child protection arenas and things like that. You may have heard some of these terms before. So safeguarding, as you can see, is a common thread that runs throughout all our practice. But when we start looking at what level of service are we offering, these are the sort of 4 broad areas that we're looking at, with that golden thread of safeguarding running throughout. So we have the sort of community offer. So this is the platform of healthcare and support and advice that is available across the board. It doesn't just come from ourselves as community health providers, it also comes from yourselves in school, from GPs. So anywhere that is that offer, that foundation, that platform level that children and young people sit within their communities, as it says, in order to help them reach their potential to grow, develop and reach their aspirations wherever possible. So one of the things that we do as public health practitioners, and we would love to do more of, is actually working in partnership in our local community, because children sit within their community and every community is different. So it's not the case that what we can do, for instance, in the Lowestoft area is going to be appropriate for a community in Haverhill, or in Ipswich. So part of our role that we're trained to do as public health practitioners is to look at working within the local community, to look at what the needs are in that community and how best to respond to them, because even if needs are similar, they may not need the same response in each particular community. So then we have our universal offer. So this is sort of looking at those baseline opportunities for looking at children's healthcare needs and being able to identify things at an early level to be able to be proactive and to offer support. So this is where things like our screening comes in. So our reception screening, and I'll go on a little bit more about that side of things, and things like our Chat Health texting service. So those are things that are available to all families to access. We give the same offer to all the children for things like the screening, and that is an opportunity for them to engage with our services directly in order to be able to see if there are any health needs that may need addressing and support. Then we move on to what we call the Universal Plus level, which is a response when there's a specified need for our support. So that can come through a range of avenues. It can come through having completed an assessment in one of the screening opportunities at a universal level, that a specific area of need is identified, or it can come as a referral. And often, particularly for ourselves in school nursing, a vast number of referrals are received from yourselves in school. So we are offering support on health needs, so physical health needs, sexual health needs, emotional well-being concerns at that Universal Plus offer. And then the Universal Partnership Plus offer is where actually, you know what, those needs, not, although we say we're always working in partnership with yourselves in schools, sometimes we actually need more than one professional involved to really support that child's needs. So examples of those are perhaps where social care is involved, or early help team are involved, and there may be a family support worker involved. So we would work in partnership with them, addressing that specific health need. So tends to be at Universal Plus, it's usually us that is leading. We may be suggesting things to yourselves in school, but we may not necessarily be bringing a plan together completely with you, whereby when you get things like family network meetings, they would be at Universal Partnership Plus, where we've actually got a range of people and the parents, carers, young person all together, pulling together that plan and all working together for the goals that we want to achieve. There is starting to be some slight changes to this terminology, so you may start to see terms like targeted and specialist being referred to, and that can get very confusing as practitioners. So just in case you start hearing those terms targeted and specialist coming in and you think, what does that mean? Targeted would be the equivalent of Universal Plus, and specialist Universal Partnership Plus, but it can get quite confusing. But just so you're aware, those are some of the terms that may start to be used over the coming weeks and months. So we've mentioned about our universal offer and, well, this platform of care. Just to let you know, I've mentioned the health assessments, the reception screening, and also the NCMP in Year 6. The Healthy Child Programme is our sort of mainstay, our sort of Bible, really, from which our universal offer stems from. And that talks about having health assessments for years for reception, but also for those in years 6, 9 and 11. So we have got plans in place which will be rolled out, and you will hear more about in the coming weeks. They are not going to be individual health assessments because we wouldn't be able to have the capacity as a service to offer that. So we're currently in the developing an electronic health assessment tool. As I say, further, it's being developed at the moment. The plan is it will start to be rolled out from September 2021. So keep your ear to the ground for more information about that coming out in the coming weeks before the end of term. We also, the mainstream school nursing teams offer confidential health drop-ins or self-referral appointments in secondary schools and pupil referral units. Sort of how that's delivered in each area is very much up to each local team, because for example, in the Lowestoft area, I'm aware, if any of you are from the Lowestoft area, our teams up there have a day where they spend in each week in schools, and they offer an appointment-based system whereby in other schools they may just come into a school at lunchtime once every couple of weeks. So it is very much, that's where you start to get that more localized offer developed in partnership with your local teams. Obviously, over COVID, as we understand, everything has been wiped out by COVID. So those things are starting to be developed. And I was hearing as people entered the room today that that's already coming up and being developed in some schools, being reintroduced in some schools. So that's really positive. Obviously, we do have students in both, or pupils in mainstream and in special schools with education, health and care plans. So again, those children from my perspective, obviously that's the mainstay of our work, because most of the children that my team work with have EHC plans, but equally our colleagues in mainstream do become involved for specific aspects where there's health needs that are appropriate for school nursing to support. One of the things that we also get that you may not be aware of is that we receive the accident and emergency attendance notifications. So any child that has attended A&E, we get a copy of the notification of that attendance and the details of that attendance, which we then, as a school nursing service, each and every one is reviewed. At the moment, each and every one is reviewed and a decision made as to whether or not that child or young person would benefit from a follow-up from school nursing. So that would normally be in a telephone contact, just to check out if there's any concerns and anything that needs follow up, and maybe to offer if there's a particular health issue that may benefit from a little bit more input, then we will offer that. If we can't get hold of parents, or maybe the young person if they're older, then sometimes we send a letter instead, but we try, if we can, to do a telephone contact. We also, like yourselves, you may be aware of in schools that you get notifications from domestic violence incidents that have been attended by the police. We also get those. We don't do the same follow-up. We review the records, and if we feel there is an ongoing concern, or if we're aware of health issues that we've been involved with, that thing with safeguarding where we have to sort of set things in context, then we may follow up at that point. But we do get those, so that we've got that awareness of what life is like for that child and what they're going through, or a little bit of a feeler as to what's going on. In partnership with the Parent Hub, we also help support parents and carers with the confidence in their parenting skills, particularly around health-related issues, and to help them provide the best opportunities for their child as they grow up. So in the same way that yourselves support that around sort of to help their children from a sort of education perspective, we support that from a health perspective. And for yourselves in schools, traditionally we always used to come in and do assemblies, and I'm sure some of you, those of you that have been in practice for the duration that I have, we used to trundle around all the schools and go and do lovely assemblies, welcome assemblies and things like that. Unfortunately, again, capacity doesn't allow us, and obviously with COVID that has been a no-go. So one of the other areas as part of our digital offer that's in progress at the moment, and I'm not sure whether it has actually been launched, but will be about to be launched. We're just doing some work around having that will get sent out to you, is having a little YouTube clip that you'll be able to play to children and young people and to parents and carers. They're all under development at the moment, so that offer will be available for you to share within your schools at sort of new assemblies and parents' evenings and things like that, but will also be available on our website. So they're things, again, that my school nurse manager colleagues are working on and will be sharing with their respective schools in their area as and when it's available. We also can do group work in the schools, and I know that again, some of you may have had experience where if there's a particular area of need, we may come into the school. Again, you know, this has all been halted by COVID. I feel like a long playing record when we say that, but these are all the aspirational things that once we get a little bit more forward and are able to do group work, etc., not at the moment, but when we come out of some of the restrictions, that we'll be able to reintroduce. So if there's a particular health need in a school that's identified, then the members of the school nursing team may come in and do some work, for instance, around emotional well-being. And I know there is more work being done with schools with the emotional well-being side of things, but it's a way of working in partnership with one another. The other thing that we do is training for schools on the sort of 3 medical conditions of asthma, epilepsy and anaphylaxis. So we do that again, as a virtual approach at the moment. When we were able to offer it face to face, we offer it as a locality based approach. We do get still quite a number of requests from schools for us to go into schools and do individual school training in respect of that 3-in-1 training, as we call it. Again, we don't have the capacity, which is why we introduced the locality training. So we try and encourage schools to identify key people that they feel would benefit from accessing that training. But if there is more training needs within the school, we can signpost to e-learning, etc., that may be available and may be appropriate for other staff to be able to access. Now, I should put the caveat on that, as you can see from the slide, that in the Lowestoft and Waveney area, so anyone that's on this workshop or watching this workshop afterwards that is from a school from the Lowestoft and Waveney area, because you are under there's some slight differences with commissioning of services, and at the current time the arrangement is that the community children's nursing team based at James Padgett provide that training for the schools in the Lowestoft and Waveney area. So you may get a slightly different model to maybe your colleagues if you spoke to them in the rest of the Suffolk to what we offer, but that is where we're at the moment with that offer. Occasionally, we may be asked to get involved with individual training in schools around specific health conditions. Sometimes that's not necessarily about a specific medical condition such as diabetes, because what we often do in those situations is link you up with the relevant specialist practitioners. But there are times that there may be an identified health need where perhaps the school nursing team could go in and just give some support and information to staff. And what they are trying to do in certain areas is to identify health needs within a school community, sort of working with schools to create your health and wellbeing action plan. So that's being piloted in a couple of areas. Again, has been a bit stalled by COVID, but is something that is now being rekindled and developed upon. So you know, they are those couple of areas. Just to sort of, as I said, I didn't write these slides, so apologies if you feel I'm going backwards and forwards. This just sits the context of the overall 5 to 19 core offer. So just to say that we do have our health visiting colleagues that are supporting children's health needs up until the age of 5, and then we take over at 5 years old, and you can see there's that sort of transition from one to the other, but the level in the middle where it says the levels of service, or what I described earlier, so whether you're in health visiting or school nursing, that they are the levels of service that we offer. And you can see on the right hand side in column 5, I've mentioned about the health assessments, and although I put the year groups to them, they sort of fit. So you've got the 4 to 5 health needs assessment, which is reception age. Your 10 to 11 is your year 6, and then there's the 12 to 13-year-old health needs assessment, but we're actually going that's going to be the year 9 one, and it says school leavers, so that will be the year 11s. And in column 6 is looking at those, again, looking at the key themes, that the areas that you're looking at about keeping children safe, helping them maximise their learning development. So all those messages that I've already said, this is the context, this is actually taken from the Healthy Child programme. So we have in under the sort of you have the universal offer, and then we go into that universal plus, universal partnership plus that I mentioned earlier, and we break that down, that UP, as we abbreviate it to UP and UPP because it's a bit of a mouthful. We break that down into 3 broad areas, as mentioned earlier, so that we tend to not streamline children, because often they do overlap, but we find that a lot of needs will fall either into the physical health pathway, the emotional health and wellbeing pathway, sexual health, and then we do have the sort of safeguarding that sits alongside as consider weave through, but equally can be standalone as well. So quite often what happens is that we will get invited, for instance, to a child protection conference, but we may not have had any contact with that child or young person before, and we complete our interventions under the safeguarding process, but may then, as a result of that, find a health need that then needs support through one of the other pathways that are highlighted there in blue. From a geographical point of view, just so that you're aware of where the how the school nursing teams across the county are split up. So you can see they have been split up sort of in accordance with the sort of early help and social care areas broadly. So some of you may sort of recognise the map as being you may have seen in other forums and been shared with you in other ways. So if you look over, if we start over in the west of the area, the colours in that sort of browny orangey colour, the Forest Heath, Bury St Edmunds and Haverhill areas, they're covered by the West School Nursing team. And at the moment, the team manager for the school nurse manager for that area is Lindsay Eichberger. And their team is mainly based out of West Suffolk House, but as I'm sure you can appreciate, the geography is that some staff will sort of base themselves in Brandon, in Mildenhall, in Haverhill. So, but the broad team, it is basically they work as one team. Obviously, at the moment, we're all very much more home-based working at the moment, so rather than going into offices, but that's the broad patch that the West team cover. Coming over more into the central area, as it says, the area in green, so that's Central and South Suffolk, that's covered by the Central and South Suffolk school nursing team. Lucy Morton is their school nurse manager, and I'm sure those of you that come from that area will be familiar. I'm not going to go through all the staff based in each. I'll just give you an overview of the areas, and then we've got a slide about the makeup of the teams in a moment. Then you have the little area, although it looks a bit smaller, the area in red, which is Ipswich West and Ipswich South. And their team manager at the moment is Jen Carter. So although it looks small, it's quite, from a referrals and safeguarding levels, it's quite a needy area. So although geographically it's a lot smaller, the levels of need are as great as some of our other bigger areas from a geographic point of view. The area in blue is what we call the Ipswich North and East and Coastal area, and that their manager is Becky Coxall. And then finally up in the Lowestoft area, don't want to say finally, but up in the North Lowestoft, South Lowestoft and Waveney area, so the area in yellow, is their manager is Jen Carter. So Jen's covering the two areas at the moment because we've got a vacancy in the Ipswich West and South and West team. So that's how we're split. So you can see, oh, and then my team, sorry, I should say the SNAP team, School Nursing Alternative Provision team, we're across the whole of everything. So we are a county-wide team. So although I'm Ipswich based and the team is Ipswich based, we cover the whole of the county, but we're only a little team. So I'm sure Becky added this when Becky designed this, wrote this presentation, my colleague Becky, she popped in the slide about Suffolk signs of safety and wellbeing, because as I mentioned earlier, we are delivering this presentation to other colleagues, including GPs, and some of them are not as aware as ourselves with the signs of safety. So I'm sure I'm not going to go into the signs of safety. I hope that you're all familiar with signs of safety and the fact that this underpins all our practice and the values and behaviours within that. So I'm going to skip over this one, but just to say we are very much part and parcel of that framework alongside yourselves. So if you make a referral in our I think a little bit later on we actually say how to make referrals in, but actually what is going to happen if you yourselves as practitioners from schools send a referral into the school nursing service, what's going to happen? So the referral comes into, we have the central health business centre, or hub as we tend to abbreviate it to. So we do now have a one-stop shop. I'm sure most of you are familiar with that now. Previously you used to refer into your individual teams, and I think that has hopefully stopped now. So we have the single point of referral where all the referrals come in, and then they are then sent out to the respective team for that where that child goes to school. The school nurses and school nurse / school nurse manager in those teams then allocate to a relevant member of staff in the team, and an assessment tool is used to complete an initial assessment of that child's needs. If we see from the referral that actually, you know what, there's an awful lot of people already involved, we may not necessarily complete the full assessment at that point in time. So for example, when I get a referral through into my team, majority of the time there's other health, social care, education people involved in that child's care already, and it is a case of having a look to see who's currently involved, and actually can we do some networking and bring people together, because we don't want to overlap or do things just for the sake of doing things. So there are occasions where we would do that interprofessional contact first and then respond to the referrer, maybe talk to the parent and carer. And it may not necessarily be that school nursing is the right people to be involved, and we might do a bit of networking, a bit of joining up, but not actually do any direct intervention with the child or young person. But having said that, there are a large number of referrals that come into my mainstream colleagues where perhaps there's been no contact with school nursing, and it's just yourselves identified a health need for that young person. Nobody else is really involved. It's just you and the parents and the young person working together. And you need some help because they've got some health needs. So in those circumstances, there is a standard assessment tool that the school nursing teams will use to gather more information and to be able to then make an informed decision about, okay, so what's the next steps going to be? What pathway are they going to receive their care under? Those pathways I mentioned earlier, and sort of what interventions are we going to offer? There are times, because we can't pop children and families in boxes, so therefore sometimes, as I mentioned earlier, there may be more than one pathway relevant for that child's needs, but we tend to put them only on one pathway at any one time. We try and focus using the signs of safety approaches to have that dialogue and discussion with the families to actually say, okay, so what is the most pressing need at the moment? Because otherwise, if you give them too much and they are overwhelmed, then you end up getting nowhere very fast. So although there may be lots of needs, sometimes it is a case of honing down and saying, okay, so which one bit is the key? Because sometimes when you can address one issue, it can have that domino effect to other needs as well that they may be presenting with. And sometimes, even though we pop them on a pathway, sometimes when we start doing the work with them, we actually say, no, actually, we need to change a bit of tack here, change direction, and we may move around. No different to what you're doing with that sort of assess, plan, do, review. We do exactly the same. It's all the same sort of cycle, so that you don't get stuck in a rut and that you do achieve outcomes. I've mentioned obviously my team, the SNAP team as we call ourselves. We mainly support the children that attend special schools, but having said that, we are increasingly getting involved with supporting children and young people who attend the specialist provisions that are co-located in many of your schools, and also supporting the needs of children and young people that have SEND but are still accessing a mainstream placement. So that has been increasing over the years, and at the moment we are currently looking at okay, so what is going to be the future for the SNAP team, because we are such a tiny team, and as I've mentioned, a county-wide, so it's looking at the sustainability and where we go. But at the moment, that this is the model where we're at the moment. And we have to support the way in which we work, we tend to do things at the moment slightly differently, but similar to our mainstream colleagues, just to reflect the complexity and the fact that a lot of the children and young people have lots of professionals involved. My team works very closely with the community learning disability nursing team, again because of the reflective of the needs of the children and young people we support. So we tend to have a step up, step down approach, and we have our own referral form that enables that process to take place, because the referrals into the community learning disability team, they have quite a high threshold in respect of who they're able to support, and also how they can receive referrals. So the way in which we work together, we try and enable the right children to be able to access the learning disability team, because unfortunately, like everything, they're not always able to support as many children as perhaps people perceive they are able to. Okay, so I do find this is not, as I say, apologies, this is not my presentation. So then we're just going back a little bit about the screening side of things. So I mentioned screening earlier. So the health screening is a way of finding out people who are at higher risk of a health problem, so that you can do that proactive early intervention approach. If they need intervention, or be able to give them some information to help improve their health and well-being. You may start to hear the term a lot more being talked about social prescribing. That's something that is coming out. It's becoming sort of a more trendy, I say trendy term, but it's a very current term that you may start to hear more of. So for instance, if yourselves went along to your GP, and the GP was worried, for instance, about your weight, they can start to they can actually prescribe you social prescribing to go along to Weight Watchers and things like that. So there's a lot more of that accessing local offers, and a lot more joined up working, rather than the traditional sort of clinical model, much more that social model to try and support health needs, so that you get a longer term sustained outcome, positive outcome from those interventions. So the reception children, I'm sure most of you will again, be familiar with this, the fact that the children in reception have their hearing and vision tested. When I say test, it is a screening assessment, so it's not a full assessment. So it doesn't replace an optician's appointment, or if there was a problem identified, it's not a full screen as would be carried out by the paediatric audiology. So it is a broad sweep, no different to any health screening that you may be accessing as adults in the via your GP surgeries. So it's that way of saying, actually, there could be a problem here. Does it need a bit more, looking into and further assessment? And then a child's height and weight is recorded. If the parent says that they want that height and weight submitted for the National Child Measurement Programme, then that's fine. It can go into that data gathering, but we still do the height and weight screening recordings, unless a parent obviously declines that, because it is still a way. It isn't just for the obesity side of things that everybody thinks about. There's also the flip side of the coin, in that if there's any faltering growth, or any growth disorders that may be starting to emerge around that age, that could be picked up through doing a height and weight and being able to see how that compares to their measurements taken in their younger years. So it isn't just about the obesity agenda. It is far broader about being able to identify other health needs that may be emerging. And the screening is completed by our child health screening practitioners in the teams, known as CHISPs. So then they're not school nurses, but they are very specifically trained. They are to complete their role, and they are trained up to, and they organise, they coordinate, they are and oversee the whole of that a screening program in their respective area. So they liaise with yourselves to make sure the appropriate rooms are available, and for the duration that they need, that that you've got all the information that you need to have to enable that those screening days to happen effectively. And hopefully they will also give you the opportunity to be able to put forward any concerns, either about the child accessing the screening, any particular issues that they may have, to access that, or indeed, for you to be able to flag up any concerns that you may have. And parents receive a health questionnaire as part of that reception screening. At the moment, you may be familiar, it's on a yellow form, and you may have seen those circulating. Those will also be moving to an mainly electronic version. Obviously, paper versions will still be available if needed, but they will be moving. The plan is for those to move to electronic, the electronic version next term, hopefully. A little bit about Chat Health. So Chat Health is our texting service. I won't play you the video today, but we do have on our website, we have got a link to the Chat Health screening. The Chat Health promotional video that you're welcome to watch. And this is an independent way that young people aged 11 to 19 years can confidentially ask for help and advice about anything really, by sending a text message. So although we say, is health related, Chat Health can sometimes get queries about other things. It is confidential. They don't have to give their name, but just so that you know that if there were any safeguarding concerns, for instance, if we were really concerned about a young person's health and well-being as a way, through that contact that they're making, where we were thinking actually they could be at risk of harm, then we do have processes in place to be able to access support. So although yes, it is anonymous, from a practitioner's point of view, there is that fail-safe that we do have, just to make sure, and we have used it from time to time in the service if we've been really concerned about a young person, even if they haven't given us their name. Most of the time though, having initiated the conversation, most of the young people are happy to engage in conversation and in that texting conversation and dialogue, and some of them then go on to have appointments. Some of them don't, some of them just get that information. So it is independent for the 11 to 19-year-olds. The parents and carers carers are also welcome to use it, but we tend to try and keep it more for our 11 to 19-year-olds. And encourage the parents to contact us via email or via the hub. But obviously we wouldn't, if we get a parent carer, then contact us, then obviously we would still respond. And the plan is as well for Chat Health, but it will be a different number, is going to be rolled out to for the 0 to 5 age group for parents carers who are under the health visiting service. It's going to be rolled out for them to be able to use, but as I say, that will be a different number to the one that you can see on the screen here. We've spoke about referrals earlier. So this is our health business centre number, our one-stop single point of access. So that's our telephone number if you need to contact the school nursing team, whichever team, so it's any mainstream team and the SNAP team. It's that 0345 607 8866 number, and that is our email address. You will find that because the Health Business Centre is very busy, you may find, and it is likely that you will need to leave a message if you phone us, and then you will get a response back because of the volume of calls. So don't be alarmed if you get a voicemail instead asking you to leave a message. Do leave a message, because they do get through and respond back. Our current referral form for the service is always found on our Suffolk County Council on the Suffolk County Council website under school nursing. We do encourage, rather than saving a referral form in your archives, if you can use the latest one that is on the website, because we do tweak and adjust it from time to time. It has just had a little bit of a revamp. I think you'll see the referral form in a minute, which I'll share with you, but even that, since this presentation was done, it had a bit of a tweak over the last month. So we do say try and use the one off the website. We are also sort of trying to work, but it's still work in progress, is maybe looking to see if we can have some form of portal, maybe linking to the portal, so where you do your MASH referrals and your CAF through. We are in tentative, but it's still very early days, because we recognise that would be a lot easier to have a portal, particularly for professionals like yourselves. But we welcome referrals from school staff. It doesn't have to, it can be Senkos, it can be teachers, but equally, and obviously other professionals can refer to us. We don't have any parameters in school nursing about who can refer to us, and parents, carers can refer their child to us. Equally, a young person can refer themselves. So anybody can refer in and ask for advice. We are sort of a universal service in that respect. So this is just so that you know what you're looking for. If you look on the website, and in case you think, oh, what does the referral form look like? This is the one for the mainstream school nursing team. I can send, if anybody's interested who may have children that may come under the STAP team, we can always let individual people have a referral for our team and / the learning disability team, if that's appropriate. But if in doubt, please don't worry. If you've got this for the school nursing referral form, you can always use this one and it will wend our way to us. It's not a problem. It's better to fill in a referral form, the one referral form, rather than worry too much about which one am I completing, am I doing the right one. So the referral form that's been designed for the mainstream team, it contains the first part contains information. Just a reminder that we ask you to complete it with the parents, with the involvement of the child, a young person as appropriate, and their parents, carers, for their age and understanding. So you do need to make sure that you put on the form that you have gained consent. If you send it in without ticking the box that consent has been given, then it will be returned to you. If a form is sent in and there's hardly any information on it, it will be sent back to you. So we do request that rather than it being a ping pong bouncing backwards and forwards, we do ask for your help in sending in as much information. We don't need an encyclopedia of information, because if we're going to take it and we're going to come and gather more information, but those key bullet points is really important. So if I can encourage people, to do that, it's really, really helpful, so that helps our understanding. So there is information on the form to reiterate that. And so this is just so your familiarity, a lot of it is the same as which you'd complete on other referrals, but there is useful information for us, things like particularly around a person's language. So and things like if school attendance, to know if there's a big difference between the impact of a child, as a child's health, if their attendance is still at 89, 90, 95% as opposed to only 35, 40%, that helps us in thinking about, okay, so what is going to be our response time, and and who are we going to allocate it to. This all helps us with that information. If you can put information about the family and also their support network details. So that's thinking about your signs of safety, what that support network for that family. And it is based on the signs of safety about what you're worried about, what's working well. And if you can put in anything that any details about anything that you're offering or have previously offered and the outcomes that so any detail that you can give, as I say, doesn't have to be, you know, hugely descriptive. You know, keep it succinct, but keep it focused. So that, I think, is the end of the presentation. So if I stop sharing and come back to, so you can see my face, I think the only bit that wasn't in the presentation was just we mentioned about school nurses, in the fact that the teams are led by, you've got a manager, then you've got school nurses, and then you've got staff nurses that have referrals allocated to them. They may be a lot of them are very, very experienced. A lot of them go on to do their training and become school nurses. And then you have the CHISPs in the mainstream teams doing that screening. In the SNAP team, I've also lucky to have healthy child practitioners that do a little bit more of the type of role that staff nurses and school nurses do, but obviously within their limits of their knowledge and skills. So that just gives you a flavour of what the team make. So hopefully that's been helpful and gives a quick overview of things. And we've got a few minutes for questions for anyone that's got anything that they'd like to ask me. I don't know whether anything came in the chat box.
Hello, Jo. Thank you ever so much for giving us so much of your time today. I'm quite conscious of time, so I've got two questions. Somebody emailed a question that wasn't able to attend, but the question is, a pupil who's been absent for a vaccination, HPV, who does the school contact regarding catching up this vaccination at a later date?
Okay, so that's the immunisations team. We used to, as school nurses, we used to do a lot of the immunisations, and then a few years ago, because of the contractual arrangements, it's the immunisations team, and I can let Laura have the immunisations team contact number so that schools have got that.
Lovely, thank you. And the other questions in the chat bar, that was from Teresa, and she asks, will you support with an IHP for a child and an intimate care plan?
Okay, so what we try and encourage is we tend to be there in an advisory and supportive role. So what we try and encourage is that as schools, if you've identified a health need, that in the first instance that you would talk to parents and try and come to a decision and pull that plan together, and with the child or young person. Obviously, if there are specific sort of health needs that you're not sure about, or perhaps you're not you're not quite sure that you've got all the information and would like a bit of advice and support, then certainly the school nursing team can help in an advisory role. But what we don't do is we don't get, oh, please can you, this child needs an IHP or a care plan, please can you do it? We very much ask that you take the lead and we come in if needed in that advisory role. And obviously if there is more information that needs to be got from other health professionals, or it may be that we need to put you in touch with somebody, because if it is a very specific health need that they're under a specialist health practitioner for, we may just need to link you together for that support. But it is more that focus as opposed to us writing the care plans on your behalf.
Thank you, Jo. I hope that's cleared that one up, Teresa. And also she asked about the intimate care plan.
So again, the intimate, I mean, we do recommend because a lot of children and young people are needing support, for their personal care in schools. So we do recommend that schools actually start to think, and Kate can also give support from that through those schools that are registered with medical needs. When Kate does her self-evaluation with yourselves, we do encourage, where schools have children who are requiring support with their personal care, that you have a policy that covers what the school is going to offer, bearing in mind the requirements that you can't ask parents to come in and, for instance, and support that personal care. And then again, if you've got that policy, then you can build that plan in partnership with the child, young person and the parents to be able to support that, because it's, you know, it is personal care, but it's just thinking about the safety. And again, we're there for a support and advice, but wouldn't actually write that care plan. So same principles as for IHPs.
Thank you, Jo. Are there any other questions that anyone wants to open their mics up very quickly? Okay, that seems, I think you've covered everything, Jo. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for your time and for giving us an insight into our local school nursing service. It was really interesting. So thank you very much. We've got signposts how to contact you. I think that was all really clear. And thank you for the support that you've given to the Medical Needs in Schools project also. So thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you, everyone. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to be in touch with us.
And Mrs. Mann says, we look forward to having the school nurses back at Parkside. So
excellent. Yes, yes. I think everybody's itching to get back now that the COVID restrictions are starting to lift a little bit. So that's really good to know. Thank you.
All right, well, we look forward to seeing you. Take care. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jo.
Bye.
Thank you.